In this video, we're going to talk about feeder cars, or gateway vehicles. It's the concept of just getting into one of your first fun cars, learning how to work on it, learning how to drive it, learning about the nuances of it and what you like and dislike, and then using that as a platform to move on to that next car, maybe even more expensive. And it doesn't matter what age you are. If you're a young person and you think about, well, one day I want a supercar, or you have a specific car in mind, or you play it in a video game or have it on your wall, even all the way getting to the adult age of not really experiencing cars and then dabbling with it when you have more money. So there's always going to be that first car that kind of sets you off. Everybody's story is a bit different, but very similar, regardless of what brand or country you're from. And this is a very exciting place to be when you're first learning something. But for many people, they're constantly searching for what their end game car is. And I'm sitting inside a BRZ, which is the 86 or FRS or whatever you want to call it. And this car's been around for a long time. There's other vehicles like the Miatas, the Type Rs, the Zs, the RX-7 or RX-8 or S2000s. You can keep going on and on. And a lot of people are finding now, because of the way that the world has changed quite a bit in the automotive space, some of these feeder cars are becoming the end game vehicle for many people. And there's a lot of reasons why, and that's some of the place that we're going to talk about in this video. Back 25, 30 years ago, you might have gotten in a car where you're like, there's no way I'm going to keep this long term because there's going to be something better. And you could afford something better. Well, that's not so much the case anymore. Some of these kind of gateway vehicles have become so competent and so good and so enjoyable to drive on the street, and they are so powerful on top of it. There's less of a trade-off now of having a car like this or some of the lower power cars or lower priced cars and figuring out a way to keep them alive for 20, 30 years and just slowly adding on them because the aftermarket has now gotten so strong on many of them. There's this pride of ownership that you get from having something more attainable and something that you could keep in your garage as a second or third car without having the mental anguish of trying to keep up with it or the cost of it. Jack and I are going to take this car for a drive, and we're going to talk through some of this stuff about how our opinions have changed over time as well. Jack. Get into it. This is what happens when things change in the world. I remember circa 2013 when I bought an FRS for $27,000 and I had a real job, and I thought to myself, you know, I can afford this as a second car. It would be fun to screw around with, and you know what? If I modified it or I messed it up, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Now you look at these things, and this thing's like, you know, 36 plus
almost $40,000 with tax.
You have the Type Rs of the world at 47,000, Corollas in the 40s. You have a Prelude that's a 200 horsepower a direct drive hybrid thing for $40,000+. Everything has taken on a new meaning in the world of feeder cars. Feeder cars are no longer feeder cars.
No, they're forever cars now.
Yeah. So a car like this, I wanted to get back in the BRZ, and I drove the Type R, and you drove the Corolla for a long time, and I think perspective shifts based on the reality of where you're at in life. And I think this car specifically, as much as it's been played out, everybody's done everything with it, it is a very special car in the regard that you just go back to the basics here. It's something that a lot of people, including us, cry about. Manual trans, which is disappearing. Rear drive, lightweight, simple physical controls. You don't have 10 screens in here.
Pretty good inputs. A manual parking brake that I don't have to sit there and toggle. I mean, and the best part about it is it's completely and utterly unmatched in its driving character. Basically, one of the few in existence that drives like this for the price point. And plus the only thing other than maybe a Miata,
yes,
which isn't a only car,
right,
that you can get into. I think, to me, I owned an 86 like you did, like the first gen car. I owned a BRZ.
Yeah, and that's how we met.
Yes, that's how we met.
I
bought a second gen car for our video series, and we've driven every variant of this thing. And I drove the Ponzu edition,
the chicken Ponzu
at the GR Corolla and final edition.
Supra launch, and I didn't shoot a video on the car because they didn't really change all that much other than yellow paint and quad poo shoots out the back. But the general takeaway even there is that car, for the amount of money it costs, is every bit as fun, and albeit not as fast as its bigger siblings in its lineup. I think now that we've driven everything, I mean, we outside of the $1 million hypercars, we've driven every modern 911 Porsche product. We've driven Revuelto, we've driven some Ferraris, we've driven McLarens and GTD ZR1. All these cars. The thing I appreciate about this vehicle is because the base car now is so good, the amount of fun you're getting for around $40,000 is so high that it's not like when you go to a Carrera T, for example, the fun doesn't 3x.
Right. And I think that was kind of the point that I wanted to make is, you have a car like this that was basically a public service now that has been out for the better half of, in variations, over 10 years. The used car market is very great on it. You can get one of these, you can get a Miata, you can get some of these cars that, well, yes, they're not impressive on paper, they're not going to win a drag race against anything or a track day, but they bring you back to what these types of cars were designed to be. I want to go on a weekend or an afternoon when I get off of work, and I want to know that I can enjoy what driving really is in a pure car as much as you can, without knowing that when you go back home and you look at your bank statement and you're struggling to exist, you can still have a little bit of fun without breaking the bank. And I think that's what I've learned quite a bit doing this is, well, yes, I don't want to poo-poo or downplay the fact that some of these very, very expensive cars are special.
Yes.
There's nothing like them. But you mentioned it, the fun factor versus the cost factor is not accelerated by like 100+%.
No, at a certain point they are luxury goods,
yes,
right? So,
right. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to have a 3RS in my garage.
3RS is a better driving experience.
Yeah,
but
what I'm saying is, like, I get in this, and as a street car and just going and having fun, I've had a lot of fun in this car when you just turn off your brain to, like, could this be better, could that be better, and realize what it really does good and what it does deliver for the amount of money. And that, to me, I think we're going to do some of these series and talk about cars like this again, where we're trying to figure out what are these cars that you could realistically buy, that you're not having to have an argument with your spouse about, that you're not looking at your insurance cost where it's essentially a car payment. That's what brings back the fun to cars, when you don't have that type of liability.
I think with the 86, the BRZ, and the Type Rs and the Golf Rs of the world, and that like 30 to mid 40 price range, the nice thing about these cars now, and that many of these cars now are objectively very, very good in their latest iterations, that next class of car in performance is in that $60,000 to $70,000 range. Hell, a Mustang GT performance pack premiums in the 60s. That car, while it is faster, or a Supra is faster than this is, and more capable on track, and blah blah blah, I don't think that extra $20,000 necessarily warrants the improvement, or whatever you want to call it, in an experience.
Well, I really don't think a lot of these cars that have gone into the $60,000, $70,000+ range now are massive steps up. I mean, there are some exceptions to that rule, but like
a used C8.
Yeah, exactly. But again, this is going back to some of these really important cars that are still in the attainable range, that can be bought in the used market. And I go back to some of these cars like this that kind of started and kicked off that next generation.
Affordable cars.
The affordable cars. You had like the Fist, the Focus RS, which Ford gave up on pretty quick without really doing too much improvement to it. And then we got into the NDs, the Corolla, the GR Corolla, while Elantra N, which is still the best value in all of them, but like the Corolla, the GR Corolla, which I know there's rumblings that they're going to go to a 4-cylinder in the next generation. Who knows, whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, as much as we weren't like as big of fans of that car because it doesn't have like the rawness, it still delivers something very special of an old school experience that now on the used market, they're very much appealing. You know, all these cars, there's a lot of choices, like the Z.
Yes.
You know, now that the Z's
You
come
can
down.
get them in the 30s.
Yeah, I mean, these are a lot of cars to have fun as that maybe your second or first car to get into, trying to be
Yeah,
excited
you
for
don't
cars
have to
again.
buy a new M2 or a Porsche 911 to buy a good sports car. They
Yeah.
do exist.
And we do focus a lot on those cars.
Because that's what's
obviously,
new.
Because that's what's new. But, you know, just getting back to reality, I mean, there are ways of really enjoying the car world and knowing what box you can fit in, what makes you happy. These cars can deliver a lot of happiness without destroying your bank account. So to sum all this up, after all these years of driving different cars, what I can tell you is everyone's story is uniquely different. Whether you're older and just getting into cars, whether you're young and just the dream of getting into something special or anything as a transportation device, everybody has their different reason why they buy the cars they do. From flex factor to uniqueness to loving to drive to being a track day bro. And there's so many reasons why people enjoy the automotive experience depending on where you live. And the main thing I wanted to say is it really doesn't matter how much money you spend. You can find something as simple as this, or a car that is used with 1 million miles and put some work into it, and find the purity and enjoyment of a driving experience. Just because there are very expensive cars out there, it doesn't mean that it delivers that happiness factor or that special factor that you've been seeking your entire life. Because like anything, it's human nature that you get used to certain things, and that special factor tends to wear off for most people. So I personally, and Jack feels the same way, try to experience a lot of the cars through us and other people that have the experience that we do. Try to drive as many cars that you possibly can and find something that connects with you on an emotional level that makes you smile regardless of what it is. And that's how you're gonna find your joy in the automotive space. But thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.